In 1804, a man who stood 5 foot 6 inches tall crowned himself Emperor of France. Not because a king gave it to him, not because he inherited it, because he took it, with nothing but strategy, psychology, and an obsessive understanding of human nature. At his peak, Napoleon Bonaparte controlled more of Europe than any man since Julius Caesar. He was feared by kings, worshipped by soldiers, studied by generals for 200 years after his death. But here is what most people don't know about Napoleon. His greatest weapon was never his army. It was his mind. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how Napoleon thought, how he dominated, and what his rise and fall can teach you about power, discipline, and success. Stay until the end, because his greatest lesson came not from his victories, but from his defeat. Napoleon Bonaparte was born in 1769 on the island of Corsica. He was not French. He was Corsican, an outsider. When he arrived at the French military academy at age 9, the other boys mocked his accent, his background, his size. Most people would have shrunk. Napoleon turned it into fuel. While the other boys socialized, Napoleon studied history, mathematics, military strategy, geography. He read everything. By the time he was 16, he had consumed more military history than most generals twice his age. And he developed one belief that would define his entire life. Knowledge is power, and preparation destroys luck. He didn't believe in luck. He believed in preparation so thorough that what others called luck, he called the inevitable result of superior planning. At 24, he was already a general. At 30, he was the most powerful man in France. Not because the world gave him a chance, because he was more prepared than everyone around him. Always. Here is what made Napoleon terrifying to his enemies. He understood people better than they understood themselves. He once said, "There are only two forces that unite men, fear and interest," and he used both masterfully. With his soldiers, he used interest. He remembered names. He knew their families. He walked among them before battles. He made every soldier feel personally seen by their emperor. The result? Absolute loyalty. Men charged into cannon fire for Napoleon, not because they had to, because they wanted to. With his enemies, he used fear. He moved faster than anyone thought possible. He attacked when they expected rest. He retreated when they expected attack. He was unpredictable by design, because an unpredictable enemy is an uncontrollable enemy. Napoleon understood something most leaders never learn. Control is not about force. Control is about perception. Make people believe you are unstoppable, and half the battle is already won. Before the first shot is fired. Before the first move is made. The psychological war was always his first battlefield. Napoleon's military genius came down to one principle: speed and concentration. While enemy armies moved in slow, predictable formations, Napoleon moved fast. Dangerously fast. He would identify the weakest point in the enemy line, concentrate his entire force on that one point, break through, and destroy the army from the inside. He called this the central position strategy. And it worked again and again against armies twice his size. But here's what made it truly powerful. Napoleon didn't just apply this to war. He applied it to everything. In politics, he identified the weakest opposition and destroyed it first. In negotiation, he found the single point of leverage and pressed it until the other side collapsed. In life, he focused on one goal at a time with complete, obsessive concentration. He once said, "Nothing is more difficult, and therefore more precious, than to be able to decide." Decision, speed, concentration. While others were still planning, Napoleon was already winning. This is not just military strategy. This is the psychology of every successful person who ever lived. And then, Napoleon made the mistake that destroys most powerful people. He started believing he was above the rules. In 1812, he invaded Russia. Every advisor told him not to. The distance was too great, the winter too brutal, the supply lines too long. Napoleon didn't listen, because by 1812, Napoleon had stopped studying his enemies. He had started assuming he would win. An assumption is the enemy of strategy. The Russian campaign destroyed his army. 600,000 soldiers entered Russia. Less than 100,000 came back. And from that moment everything unraveled. Within 3 years he was exiled, defeated, alone on a small island in the South Atlantic. The man who had crowned himself Emperor of Europe died in captivity. But here is what makes his fall so important. It wasn't Russia that defeated Napoleon. It was ego. The same fire that built his empire burned it down. Because he stopped doing the thing that made him great. He stopped being a student. And the moment you stop learning, the world starts winning. 5 lessons from Napoleon's life that apply to yours today. First, preparation destroys luck. Napoleon didn't wait for opportunity. He created it through obsessive preparation. While others were reacting, he was already 3 moves ahead. In your career, your business, your finances, the person who prepares most thoroughly wins most consistently. Second, make people feel seen. Napoleon remembered the names of his soldiers, their families, their stories, and they died for him willingly. In any relationship, personal or professional, the person who makes others feel genuinely seen holds the most influence. Third, speed is a weapon. While your competition is planning, you should be executing. While they are debating, you should be deciding. Speed creates momentum, and momentum is almost impossible to stop. Fourth, concentrate your force. Napoleon never spread himself thin. He picked one point and hit it with everything. Most people fail because they try to do everything at once. Pick one goal, one target, one direction, then put everything you have into it. Fifth, never stop being a student. This is Napoleon's most important lesson, and his most painful one. The moment he thought he knew everything, he lost everything. The most dangerous words in any language are, "I already know that." Stay hungry. Stay curious. Stay humble enough to keep learning, no matter how much you've already won. Napoleon Bonaparte rose from an island nobody had heard of to dominate an entire continent. And then he fell, not because the world was too strong, because he forgot what made him powerful. The hunger, the preparation, the obsessive study of everything around him. He once said, "Impossible is a word found only in the dictionary of fools." He lived that belief until he didn't. The question is not whether you have what it takes. The question is, are you still hungry enough to keep learning? Subscribe to this channel. Every week, we break down the psychology, strategy, and discipline of the most powerful people in history, so you can apply it today.